All right, we are recording. We do have some AC units going on right now, so this speed up, I don't think today, they indicate that for the record. Welcome to the Downtown Management Commission meeting. It is May 13th, 2025, and I'm called roll. Eric Dahl. Here. Justin Calvin.
Present.
Andy Nathan is not here. Don Coe.
Here.
Stephanie Trees. Here. And I will now turn the meeting over to Chair Pro for procedural items.
So we have our meeting minutes from March 25, and then we have separate meetings for that special meeting as well. Do I hear approval of the March 2025 meeting minutes to approve?
Second.
Okay, those are approved. Same thing for the meeting from April, the special meeting. Do I hear approval of those minutes? To approve.
Second.
Boom. Apparently we're having elections for chair and vice chair.
So this is part of the annual business for them, so it shows up at the May meeting for all of our commissions. We don't have any new commissioners for this commission. So typically we do in May. But I will leave it up to you as the chair to determine whether or not you're ready for a pass.
Well, with Stephanie, I know you're going out for some time, and we have had. What's one meeting? Okay, only one meeting. We have passed around chair and vice chair. I'm happy to keep doing it. Would anyone else like to nominate someone for, or self-nominate for chair or vice chair? For all of them.
That is fun.
Good. You good, Stephanie? Okay, so we'll just say we didn't have elections. I guess it's probably more appropriate that we discussed it, that we're not having elections because everyone's happy. Public participation. Is there anyone from the public here?
There's no one from the public online.
Cool. Consent agenda. Topics will not be discussed and there are questions posed. I had some questions about the commercial district fund. I think which falls under here, maybe under current financials and sales tax report. So maybe I'm jumping in. Consent agenda. Nothing. Okay, moving on to financials then. On page 21 of the packet. For 2025, adopted and revised, it had 25K for special events, only this 1 year. Just didn't know what those were.
So that was a one-time approval. The executive budget team and city council approved a one-time increase of $25,000 for special events specific to downtown. It also had a couple of implications to the other funds, but it was just a one-time approval. So if we find there was a strong use for that, we will have to ask for those funds again for this year.
And last year, the city paid downtown Boulder, as I recall, for like the soccer and the roller things and all those years ago. What are these events?
So this is programming to increase special events broadly. It's not specific special events. It's more to increase the depth of the office of special events so that they can host more special events, whether it's sponsorships or whether it's any materials or any sort of NPE costs that would be associated with special events in the downtown area. So there's not a designated special event that this is funding. It's just to help us broaden the office of special events opportunities.
Does anyone else want to know more about any of that? Y'all happy? My second question around all this is we had the action plan or the vision plan for 50 years of Pearl Street. Was any of that being funded?
Are you talking about like what we kind of loosely call the Pearl Street refresh?
Yeah.
Or the downtown vision.
Yeah.
So the downtown vision plan was commissioned through the downtown partnership with support from the city. There's certainly that'll be a resource document. The upcoming readings to be talked about and the next steps that we include the press releases. So we can speak to that certainly later.
So we should move that matters of staff.
It's already.
Oh, it is in matters of
Yes. It's related to our commercial areas blueprint, which we've been guiding investments. For the downtown. areas.
Any other questions on financials?
Can I ask a clarifying question about the sales tax? So looks like down, so there's east downtown, and then Pearl Street. So this downtown include Pearl, east and west?
Yes,
Okay. So looks like that, I'm reading this right, that there's a 6% decrease year over year in sales tax from Pearl Street Mall, only like a little more than 1% for east downtown. So should I assume that the west then is offsetting it with the only less than 1% decrease overall?
Actually, those are all separate. It's-
Okay, they all are all separate.
Yes, they're
Not
all,
inclusive?
downtown includes Pearl Street.
well, yes, it does. Okay, the boundaries over it, I included the boundaries in the packet. In the downtown geo area. In the center of it does have Pearl Street Mall, but that Pearl Street Mall is a separate geological area. So I don't know if the taxes, they're not double counted.
East downtown is not included in the downtown.
East downtown is not downtown. Okay.
So this is East Downtown, it's this very large section, and I can share my screen, and I apologize, it should be in your packets as well. But yes, it's much further, and it's a much larger area as well, but from a commercial perspective, it's.
Okay, so the east, it's not just the east end, Pearl, it's a bigger area.
It's a much larger area.
Okay.
Correct, yeah.
But I should still then assume in the downtown that the west, that it's mostly East Pearl Street and then the west end.
And so here's Pearl Street is just these 4 blocks, I can't get me. Promises, I don't press this up. There you go. So Pearl Street includes 11th all the way over to 15th. And you can kind of see there, it's basically just the Pearl Street Mall and a little bit of the county courthouse. Whereas the downtown area. That's where you're getting the west end. So the west end is captured more in the downtown geological area than the Pearl Street geological area. But it's gonna be much larger than just the west end. It's all of downtown. So there's not really a west end
Yeah,
geological area for sales tax that we're tracking.
but like the biggest sales tax decreases are in Pearl Street, like that Pearl Street Mall area, in that within that whole boundary area.
The numbers are what we're saying. If you look just at Pearl Street Mall,
Yeah.
sales tax is down.
Yeah,
We look at all of downtown, including Pearl Street Mall, sales tax is ever so slightly not down.
yes,
So
slightly,
it
yeah,
means that the rest of downtown
it's offsetting.
is offsetting the losses.
Okay.
Yeah, it's down. And that could be,
extension.
okay,
So downtown extension is kind of more like the area between the library and,
Yeah, it's a very interesting boundary.
Why are they rich?
no, they're doing down.
Somehow they're doing really well.
Yeah,
What is that?
I was looking at backwards.
I just
So-
thought that was being bad, I
very, you'll notice it's a small number on downtown extension. So there's generally been a lot of fluctuation because that was where Alphafas was. So when Alphafas closed, downtown extension way down. This is not included that. This is gonna be in that space, and then like the shops on Broadway. But again, it's a very small overall percentage of the whole downtown, so. And it's not even indicated, so it's probably not even. All those businesses along Broadway, that around the.
Here's a,
Last year's last in.
yeah,
They're bringing a lot into that.
Riverside. Hotel.
Library down there.
Okay, I guess, yeah, so like the connected question, I know that we don't know the answer to this, but. Like any hypotheses around why Pearl in particular a lot worse than the overall downtown in terms of sales tax? Like the types of businesses or is there any one looking into this or anything?
You know, we could look at Placer to hone in a little bit more, but it's really hard to correlate visitation with retail sales tax. And again, this is just sales tax. So sales tax is just kind of one piece of the puzzle in terms of business performance. So it's hard to create a strong causation for
Yeah.
why Grove Street went down. I will say we'll be keeping an eye on it and watching trends, and this is the end of year report, so year over year. So once we get Q1 in, now that we've kind of finalized that, mind you, we just got December sales tax data, so we're pretty far behind in getting the reporting out. So we're hoping to get some reports sooner, but yeah, I would say Q1 would be a good way for us to start drawing some pictures and seeing if there's any correlations on what's going to Grove Street.
Maybe my question around all that is, do we want? Does the city want to have more fine-tuned areas like the West End, like the East End, so we could start to like, look at it more granularly, what with like all the people wanting to close the West End and stuff, we could actually start tracking like. Because we are kind of blobbing a lot of areas together.
This is all managed by the budget office and finance, so they have to do this for the entire city. This topic has come up before, and they are generally hesitant to carve out.
Special.
Yeah, there is administrative burden associated with that on a regular reporting basis, and so there's not a lot of incentive. Other than the reason that we have these boundaries in the first place is because of special taxing districts that have existed over time, where the Pearl Street Mall was first built, there were assessments on adjacent properties in order to build the original improvements. And so there was a need to separate that out because there was a different level of taxation. So just to do it because we're curious, we'll probably not fall too enthusiastically. That would need to be tied to some sort of long-term strategy as to why we need to separate this area out versus another area.
Okay. I mean, like, it just doesn't seem to reflect broader economic trends and it's just affecting one strip more than the next. It would make me think about what's the business. What are the businesses in particular?
Or did one block have like a major vacancy?
Yeah.
And you could just immediately say like, oh, such and such left.
So other things that
Yeah,
so the downs, we haven't traditionally, you know, for the decades that Agent has existed, we have traditionally provided a lot of the sales tax info. Beyond these numbers, there is line by line type of sales tax revenue, whether apparel,
Yeah.
computers, food places versus eating places. So, and that's all available. And so there's administrative burden to try to separate that out for specific districts. So we've been providing you with information that we get from the finance department pretty easily and readily. It's limited in our ability to separate out for Pearl Street for all those details.
Yeah.
I would speculate that, the holiday season is an important shopping season. Our Placer AI data shows that as far as foot traffic goes, during the last couple of months of 2024, compared to other shopping areas in the region, Pearl Street downtown was a little down. And that's such an important part of the overall sales tax picture is those last couple of months. And so that alone, that's purely speculative.
yeah,
It's a slightly weak holiday shopping season in a district translated to a down number for a year, because if I recall correctly, observed our reports from previous meetings, Pearl Street was keeping track. It's just this last month came in that is showing a decline for holiday shopping.
I mean, unfortunately, this is the best metric that we have to showcase how our business community is doing as a whole. So it's really hard. We usually hear from businesses when they're doing really, really well or when they're not doing really, really well. But they're certainly not beholden or even willing to necessarily give us their sales totals. So it is a lot of it is anecdotal. And you know, I think this fits in with the district analysis feedback that Brad Siegel gave of downtown is being kind of not in stagnation, but being a little bit flat. So if it had been like a 15% decrease, then that would be really concerning. But in this current, in the current political environment with so much unsureness, it's not surprising to me that they need it.
And 2023 was very strong. So
People were excited to get back out.
you follow a very strong year with kind of a flat year, that means that you're going to see the numbers down relative to the previous year. So it's not, terribly surprising, it's
Yeah.
concerning,
Yeah,
but it wasn't.
I don't know.
I mean, I had my best summer, this was 2023 in 10 years. So for it to be pretty close to 2023, to me, is like pretty impressive. 'Cause people were like just throwing money out, like as if all their clothes disintegrated during COVID. It was like you have nothing left to wear. You haven't even been seen in public.
It's like a marketing campaign.
Yeah.
for Sponsor partnership.
Sorry, I work at Ethan.
Cool, well, maybe to keep things, anything else on that, maybe to keep
yeah,
things moving.
thank you.
Cajun visitation report, not discussed unless questions. Place your AI stuff. Great, moving on along to the quarterly Parks and Rec update. Alan.
Folks, I'm Ally Rhodes. I'm the Director of Parks and Recreation, and we give y'all a quarterly update. So, I have to give the Zoom disclaimer. We're a Microsoft
A little hard
organization.
to hear on this side, Ally.
We turned ours off.
I've never been told that in my life, so Stephanie, you just made my day. You've got the blower right behind you. I'll do my best. I was just saying, we're a Teams organization, so give me 2 seconds. I do have some graphics to share with y'all. Right. So you all have no new commissioner members. I misunderstood someone all. You've been around, you know what Parks and Recreation is, what we do for the city. Awesome. All right. So one, just you'll note on the Pearl Street Mall, we're in the middle of the transition from spring to summer. That means our team over a span of 4 weeks, scrub every single bed, carefully remove the tulips and set them out for drying so that we can give them away in August and get flowers in the ground with the goal to make that turnover happen by Memorial Day, when we have tens of thousands of people down here for the Boulder Expo for the Creek Festival. And I'll just note, there's always a question. I know it is a bummer that it happens right before graduation and then Mother's Day. And if I had a magic wand to make it happen in a week, I would. As it is, I feel pretty impressed with what the team does to get all of the beds cleaned up and planted by Memorial Day weekend. So we're in the middle of that transition. You'll see flowers going in every single day through the end of next week. So that's it on operations. I have a few projects I wanted to talk to you about. So the civic area, you all have been hearing a lot about. I would assume we're not in an engagement window right now. And so the intent today is just a quick process update. This is our project schedule. All of this is online. You can't read any of that from here, so I'll make sure it's available in your packet. The summary is that we're at an exciting point where we have been working hard to understand the site, the significant constraints from the floodplain, from the existing buildings, the special uses to the community, all of that site analysis, a lot of community engagement. And we're at a point where we're merging that into one concept design that will be presented to the community this summer in the 3rd engagement window. We'll make sure in your packets, or if you're not on the project emails, you're alerted to those engagement opportunities, certainly as commission members and folks who care about the downtown, you'll want to be engaged in that project. Once we move through concept, we'll know and have some costing to figure out how we allocate the $18 million that's been assigned to this project. from the 2021 Community Culture Resilience and Safety Tax. $18 million is not enough for the breadth of the park, and we've included the Arboretum path in the scope of this work, recognizing the importance to update that connection. All those folks that are gonna be up on the hill for the new conference center, the Moxie Hotel, the Sundance Film Festival, we want them sliding on downtown and spending lots of money. And so the Arboretum connection is critical to that. And so in addition to the design and placemaking improvements, we're working closely with the folks in community vitality on both short-term and long-term wayfinding. So signage, so folks know when you're standing at the top of the hill, it's just a short half mile downtown to the iconic Pearl Street Mall. That's all coming through 26. We'll be doing schematic design to construction documents to permitting. We expect to have shovels in the ground late 26, early 27. Any questions on that? I'm just pausing as I go. Okay. I referenced this in the background. There is a whole lot of background for the civic area, including a couple of the documents Chris mentioned, the downtown vision plan that the Downtown Boulder Partnership recently did, some of the social seats projects that y'all were talking about recently, all of those have been inputs that have informed how folks want to use what is the largest swath of public land in downtown Boulder. This governance model is something that we really do want to socialize. So that top left quadrant, that's the design. That's where we spend a lot of money up front on capital. But what makes a park great is really what happens after the ribbon cutting. How are you taking care of it? How are you activating it? And what are you doing to enforce good social behavior? So that's a key part of this project. Again, somewhere we're working really closely with community vitality as we explore the district's analysis and potential funding models and a governance structure for the civic area. This is something that didn't get quite across the finish line with phase 1 improvements. We did great work in the park, but there wasn't an ongoing plan, structure, and funding to activate it. And we intend to do that this time so that when we cut the ribbon on whatever improvements are made, there's an ongoing plan for great activation and taking care of the space. This aligns with the feedback we're hearing from the community. We have coded thousands of comments in talking to business owners, visitors to the park, and while a lot of their comments fall in the design realm, more fall into the operations, the safety, and the space activation. So we'll be excited to talk to you more about that throughout the next year. It will have connections with the DDA work that you all will be talking about, the district's analysis, and then potentially even governance. We're asking a lot of questions right now. We don't have answers, so you might ask questions, but I probably don't know the answers yet either, because that's what we're looking into.
So because 18 million is just not a lot of money to do. How do you, you feel like it's keeping us back from really like completely re-envisioning a park that I felt that is like so underutilized and not the center of Boulder, and it could be, but it would have to be like drastically transformed, in my opinion. Like how we, is the vision like start with what we can, because the funding is really low, relatively speaking, and then build upon that? Or is it like this is all, the artist gonna hope it's re-envisioned with this little money? Like it just seems like how much it costs to build a playground, one playground, compared to that giant space. Like what can you really do that's transformative?
So I'll add a few things on that. So this project, the design piece, is to get a concept for the entirety of the park that goes beyond just the pretty pictures we had in the 2015 civic plan, so that there's a really good vision for one of two things. Either we stay steadfast to this vision and we steadily implement it as funds are available, perhaps more as part of the long-term financial strategy, perhaps more through a DDA that can fund capital investments. That's option one. Option two is you have this really exciting vision and you spur private investment, you spur philanthropic investment. I keep using the example of Omaha and their riverfront parks. Have any of you been there? I know Omaha. It's an incredible downtown park that has connected the river to their downtown. They took 50 million in city money and turned it into 350. And so, I challenge, if we can turn 20 into 100, would that be amazing? That's not something Boulder has a strong history of doing. But it's possible, for example, already we're talking to some of the private business owners who own property adjacent to the Arboretum. And the East Bookend is a huge development opportunity that can in turn drive private investment.
Okay.
But if nothing else, we have the full concept plan and steadily can implement over time. We're not letting 18 million hold us back,
Okay.
which is what I heard is your concern and
Well, I mean, it's so
Yeah.
limited, so.
I'm also appreciative that you understand $18 million isn't a lot of money that comes into the park, so that's.
Well, I was just in St. Louis and I'm now like blanking on the name of the park. That was just, in Clayton, it's like, in a part of St. Louis, and I was really, I'm sure it cost a ton.
Their natural playground, I know the one you're.
There's
talking
like 5 different playgrounds with all different ages and waterfalls, like.
Yeah.
That completely transformed the space. I was talking to locals about it. That was a ton of money, but it completely transformed the space. And so I appreciate that it would be very expensive. And well worth the investment to do that meaningfully in that space, because it's so big. Yeah, so.
The other thing we've seen, so down, cities around the country are looking at, what do you do to make sure your downtown stay these wonderful, vibrant places, the heart of Boulder. And one thing that, some of the research is showing is that there's a 7-to-1 return on investment in parks, and so we're hoping to tell that story and help keep advocating for it. So let me tell you a little bit, this is just showing, we brought people to concepts in the last window of engagement. These are the things that were most popular. The things in red were the things that resonated in both of the concepts. One is expanding the farmers market. This is not news. Every time we talk about the civic area, people are eager to build on what you have in the successful Boulder County's farmers market and this idea that it could be a food and innovation hub. There's a lot of interest in a beer garden somewhere, perhaps at the Tate Building if it were to be repurposed when some city staff moved to the Alpine Ballston campus, if not elsewhere on the site. A food truck plaza, so if folks can picture the civic area, it's that swath of land from 9th to 14th between Arapahoe and Canyon. So at Arapahoe and Broadway, those two city buildings will go away when city staff moved to Alpine Balsam. And so that area in the corner, it would be imagined as a food truck plaza. One area that's functioning pretty well right now is on that southern side of the creek. We're calling it the Boulder Beach, and we would build on some activity that is already happening in a really lovely way. People use that area for sunbathing, they use it for water play, and so could we build a beach in the middle of the city? And then folks want connectivity to the creek throughout the site. Everything else are just ideas that that resonated with people. I'll tell you, a standing wave we've known, just creek flows. Probably not going to happen in Boulder the way it happens in Bend on the Deschutes River that has year-round good water flow.
Yeah.
But a lot of interest in Teen Hub, which when you consider the proximity to Boulder High, that's exciting. So in the concept plan, you'll see the design team take just these words and help have really great pictures and imagery to demonstrate that and get input from the community. So that's this summer. We have spaced activation collaborations with a lot of the community organizations. We consider that the farmers market, the library to be our anchor partners. I already mentioned the governance work. Operations and safety is something that we're diving into because that has been such a theme of feedback from folks. And then we have a connection to nature engagement series throughout the summer. So our team is moving away from a one and done open house where folks have to come to some city building on a Wednesday night at 6 o'clock, and we're going into the park to do engagement. And so we'll be publicizing that, and there's opportunities throughout the summer, including our new favorite way to get families into the park. And that's just you bring out Jeff and Paige because all the families love them. So that's the civic area.
Another question related, I've been taking our kids to the creek, but there's like active drug dealing right by it all the time where the kids play. So I'm trying to convince friends to be like, well, maybe it's just pot, it's not that bad. But like, is there also, I think the enforcement of law down there is loose. And it deters families. I feel like that's
legal to do that.
legal to deal drugs on public.
Not to deal drugs, but you.
To use, but yeah, but that's the part where I think that.
So we're working really closely with the police department, with the urban ranger team to make sure there is good presence in the park. It's an ongoing issue. There's two challenges there. One is that there are behaviors that happen in the park that make people feel unsafe, that make people feel unwelcome, and how do we address those? The other is that as long as there is homelessness, parks will be a place where people who are unhoused will congregate. And how do you, some of it is stigma, and I feel unsafe because there are people who are unhoused in the park, and we want to address both address where there are actual safety issues. And help address some of the stigma around homelessness, and it's really hard.
Yeah.
But I just want to go back to that graphic. Safety is one
Yeah.
fourth of the quadrant, and how do we help folks both feel safe and be safe in the park? This part's gonna be really short. I think I'm at the end of my time. There are two projects that I do not have as much detail about, but we want you to know they're coming. So there is funding that has been allocated out of actually Paget dollars for some Pearl Street investment. That is in scoping now. And so the scope of that project timeline, what all it includes is very much to be determined. You'll hear more about it. Barker Park is in scoping now. So Barker Park is on the east end of Pearl Street, right at 15th and Spruce. Can you see it from here?
Not quite.
Not quite.
Building.
It's around the corner there. The play area is woefully past its life cycle. During the weekdays, it serves as the only play area for the Boulder Day Nursery, which is a longtime partner of the city of Boulder. The only, my understanding is one of the only daycares in the city to offer a sliding scale. We're eager to partner with them. We already are on the engagement. It's gonna be an incredible play area. So that will be, engagement will conclude this summer, permitting and construction through the end of the year, construction in the 26th with a ribbon cutting at the end of the summer next year. We're very excited about it, and also working closely with Chris and his team to figure out what might improvements adjacent to it look like. That's all I got.
That was the team.
Oh, great. Somebody put up my next slides. please. Sorry. Yeah, just a lot of voice. Value.
Maybe Ellie.
Ellen.
I want to also compliment by telling you on the awesome murals that just went up. It's artists.
You know that they were nervous. I mean, we do, but. not
Someone
ourselves.
broke in and this. is-
Yeah, yeah. Those are just the first, it would be some, a mural at the entrance stairs down at street level too, same artist style. Also the white wall when you, that faces out the street up here, there will be seven additional artists. Everyone to enjoy.
Love it. All right, so that is not the correct. I not updated with my art. I had a moment where I thought, wait a minute. I think I have more time. To get my work done. It's only March.
March.
And Ally, while you're here, I wanted just to say a big thank you to your team. The flowers are looking so great, and I've seen a lot of people out just planting flowers, tending to things. I know I've seen on your team too. There have been some people painting various light poles. I noticed that the Pride crosswalk got updated yesterday, so thank you. All of that work is noticed and appreciated.
Ellie, I can share my screen.
It's just making me down, but it's not, sorry.
Longer anticipation, we're really excited about what I have to say at 4:30 in that loud room. On Tuesday. Okay,
Right.
here we are. All right, great. So, you can go to the next slide. Talk a little bit about our pedestrian counts. This is very hard to read. Hopefully you can see it in in the packet. So our pedestrian counts were down slightly, but it's really important to note that our cameras at 11 and Pearl were down. The camera was messed with during the fire at Salt and the firefighting. I got to climb up on the roof on a very precarious ladder last week with our IT professional, and adjust the camera lens, so it's now, it's actually pointed in the right direction, but. If this is gonna be just sort of a data disparity point that we all need to remember. Right. So, that's that, and on the next slide, we've had a really busy couple of months representing, downtown Boulder being ambassadors around the state of Colorado. Go to the next slide, we were at the Downtown Colorado Inc. Conference, DCI in downtown Greeley, and that was a really wonderful event. About 350 downtown leaders from around the state got together. I got to serve on a panel that was led by our VP of Marketing Communication, Terry Takata Smith, who also serves as the chair of the DCI board. So we have really strong representation in Boulder. Those are some images. There was a great presentation from a woman who works on retail strategy nationally, and she did a session on ROE instead of ROI, so return on emotion instead of return on investment. It's really interesting. And she gave a shout out to our social media and the Student Banner Project in her presentation. We did not bribe her, she just did that spontaneously. So always nice to get a shout out. And I have been to Greeley before, and I have to say I was really, really impressed with the public art and their infrastructure and how clean and safe it was. They do have a DDA there, and I just really appreciated the science time here, especially at the moment at the end of March, beginning of April, where we were coming together. It just kind of felt like a weird, chaotic time. But to remember, when things are hard, there's still opportunity. I also did some advocacy at the state level. There's a picture of the Capitol Dome. So I'll be testifying in the committee for the HB 1208, which was the minimum wage to offset tip credit and move it to local governments. We did work behind the scenes with the restaurant community a lot on that. Also attended the Downtown Denver Partnership State of Downtown morning, and it was very impressive to see their statistics and the data that they're able to present, but also one of the themes was that it's really helpful when people start telling a positive story instead of just complaining about things all the time. And that resonated a lot. Talked a lot about how we're to improve, but we also have a lot to celebrate. I can go to the next slide. Also went and presented at the Colorado Creative Industries Summit, and there was a huge contingency from Boulder, which is very, very cool. There's a picture of me presenting to the group. There's some Boulderites you might recognize in the upper left. And then I got somebody reached out, somebody I just met, who's the program and art director for the JCC, and she said, hey, thanks for re-inspiring me about my own community. Your talk made me want to spend more time on the Pearl Street Mall. I just love that when you go to a conference and you actually inspire somebody from your own, get connected. I also wanted to just point out that this, on the right, there is a self-cleaning bathroom. Also funded by the Grand Junction DDA, and it cost $450,000. It was a partnership investment between their DDA and their city, and it took them 9 months to get shipped and funded and all these things. But I love the way they wrapped it. They put it, the big arts quote by Dalton Trumbo, is their celebrity exports. Anyway, that's where I've been out and about. You haven't seen me downtown as much. I've been representing around the state. On the next slide, share with you a little bit about our comprehensive marketing campaign, which is live now. So welcome to the heart of Boulder. You'll see that little heart with the map point on a lot of different things. On the next slide, this is our ad. If you play it, will it have sound?
It's easy.
This is the ad. Welcome to the heart of Boulder, the DNC.
Welcome to the heart of Boulder. where the Flatirons meet the Pearl Street Mall and the Trailhead meets the Tap Room. It's where artists, adventurers, and entrepreneurs all cross paths over a patio lunch, a farmer's market, or a spontaneous street performance. This isn't just any downtown. This is downtown Boulder, where Boulder comes to life. And whether you're here to shop small, eat big, or just feel the vibe, your support keeps the pulse of the town beating strong. So plan your visit today at visitdowntownboulder.com.
Yay, nice campaign. You may recognize some of our local celebrities from that shoot. We always use local models, and in fact, today we had a shoot with some local models that I'll show you in a couple of minutes. That spot is going to be airing on local TV stations. It's also got some audio versions that are linked to high traffic radio, and also, or sorry, traffic report radio, which is something that's listened to radio in the state. And also this year, we're targeting a lot of podcast marketing, so through a couple different campaigns, you'll start to hear that if you're listening to podcasts out and about.
This local, like,
So we,
channels, or is it also like, Hulu's, Disney ads?
I can't answer that specifically. We target very specifically to our region. We're really looking this year, especially, we heard from our community that we wanted to do more marketing to the local community. So we've concentrated our dollars on local Boulder, and focusing on in the city of Boulder and the community.
Because I know you even want like the Hulu's and all that, you can still target locally by the whole nation.
Yeah, I think maybe our ad agency does that, but I can't tell you specifically. I'm happy to follow up with you later today.
Just intrigued.
Yeah.
I know a lot. No one I know is.
Oh, well, no, these are commercial TV spots primarily.
That's what I mean. No one.
Oh, no one you know has TV, not no one you know. Gotcha.
No one has commercial, like over the air TV, kind of like 9 News kind of stuff. Everyone. Netflix is
Well, a lot of the sports channels, like Fubo and all they broadcast, NBC.
That's kind of my question.
But you see local ads.
It's also like Instagram. I can send you from marketing.
Awesome.
Can we go to the next slide? These are some of the campaigns, again, just those local, beautiful pictures. 50 quick messages. On the next slide, we'll start to see these, on some of our bus backs. So this is the bus campaign. I'm a big fan of the Boulder as the part of Boulder. That's very fun.
Yep.
And where Flatiron Casual meets 5-star flavor. Just a quick shout out. We are also launching a partnership with Visit Boulder, where we have a Trails to Restaurant campaign. So on our website, you can figure out which trail pairs best with which restaurant. So you can hike Sanitas and then go to Pasta J's. I'm not sure what the actual ones are, so I probably just misspoke that one, but it's a really fun list, and we're trying to get people to kind of do that as a passport. On the next slide. This is some of the advertising that we're launching in a lot of our nonprofit arts organizations program books. So this will be in the Shakespeare Festival, Colorado Music Festival, and also in the Boulder Weekly, Daily Camera, those kinds of print ads. And on the next slide. This is a partnership that we have with the city, and these are small cards that we distributed to 130 locations throughout downtown. This was actually by request from the restaurant community. They're trying to tell a positive story about how easy it is to park downtown. So we're inviting people to put these on their cash drop stands or insert them in the billfold when you get your check, as a way to just promote downtown Boulder as being a really easy and friendly and affordable place to park. So that's been a really great partnership. Thanks for your support on that. And on the next slide.
Maybe my one. No one wants.
It depends on what feedback is.
I love the Boulder's part of Boulder and stuff.
Oh, on the activity?
Yeah, it's hard to say where that is, like downtown, right here. It's just, we don't call out downtown there. It's hard to see what is the Boulder's part of Boulder.
Noted.
You know,
Thanks.
like. Could be the hill,
Well,
You know, with the Flatiron Five Star,
I'm sorry to say this is already in production.
yeah,
Probably
Not the
writing
demo,
down
that's-
right now.
yeah,
It's down.
yeah, it doesn't scream. Yeah. So I'll
Okay.
hold my comment.
Thank you. Just today, we had a photo shoot with some of our local celebrities. So these are the folks that signed up today. They were out and about in, I think, 9 different locations, and we'll be using their fabulous faces in ad campaigns to come.
I have another local model,
Oh.
Jungle,
it's
drinking a
Jackal.
kid's pina colada, It's the cutest thing on their menu. You can't see that, but it's
Amazing.
kind of,
Can you send that to me?
yeah.
Yeah. All right, on the next slide. We announced our Bands on the Bricks series, so this is our lineup, super excited about that. We're gonna have CU night, which will also have a preview party at the Boulder Theater on June 25th. And then just announced, I didn't have time, chance to update this, July 9th is gonna be our member appreciation night. And we've got some great new bands around alongside some fabulous faves like Hazel Miller. That's our new artwork, so you'll start seeing these posters around town, and it starts June 11th. And then finally, tomorrow, if you want to volunteer, please volunteer, sorry. No, that's okay, I forgot I put that in there. You can go ahead to finish for the next one after that. Our ambassador update, we are having some challenges with the thing that we call the smart system, which is where we gather all of our statistics, but sometimes the smart system is stupid and we have to use our human brains to try to figure it all out. So one thing that I may have mentioned the last time I was here is you have the ATLV, which is a giant vacuum, which I call the Snuffleupagus. That machine has been out sucking dirt out of gutters and helping our team. So that's a new statistic that we've tracked. You can see graffiti was up quite a bit. We don't see it, that's because our folks are out there removing it. Somebody's.
Big Belly.
Can you go back to the slide, Ellie? Big Belly service. So Big Belly is the brand of trash cans, and that's actually an archival term that we need to get rid of. I'm glad you brought that up, that I've been reading that with the every time. But basically it means, yeah, it's. I'll correct that. for next time.
Don't move too soon because we might be installing Big Belly trash cans.
By the time I get it removed from the
Exactly.
report,
Those
we'll
ones
get
on
the
the
Big
hill?
Bellies, and then-
Yes.
Yeah, you know, there's a huge, like, no one knows the trash can. People are like, I've been walking for blocks. You guys don't have any trash cans here. I'm like,
Oh, you're so pretty.
right. I'm like, we do, but they're just too pretty.
Can you go to the next slide, Ellie? This is just sort of some hot spots of where those incidents were reported and where those things were cleaned up. So as you can see, we really do have coverage over the entire business improvement district. And you can also see that it extends into the civic area as well. On the next slide, this is just for funsies. This is a version of the walk path, which I think I showed you a couple of meetings ago. You can see this is where somebody goes. It's just a random day, March 20th. We picked this day. So you can take a look at it. But there is literally an ambassador walking by every single business on every street on most days of the week. On the next slide. These are some before and after photos. So we're really having them focus as the seasons change on meeting and power washing, especially some of the vacant storefronts, which may have been a little bit neglected during the winter months. The next slide, there's some more of those. This is down in the civic area. Somebody left their belongings. We went through the process to make sure that that was cleaned up. Next slide. Again, Treewell major function. We know that the city is going to be planting a number of trees in the weeks to come. So we're really looking forward to that. We want to make sure that the tree wells are ready to accept those new trees and that the trees that exist are healthy. And then the next slide.
I just want to comment and say that I really appreciate the banners on the vacant spaces. That was something that I like really. I remember like pitching like 3 years ago. And then it happened and I was like, that's great, because it really. I mean, it does so much, it does so much. To cover up like the window and they're like, what's inside, it's construction, that's exactly.
It's not construction.
It's like, so that's been great, and I was curious, is that, like, how does that work to get that set up?
Yeah, so Christine and Regan have been really helpful getting that ready, and it took a while to produce those.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure, so the process, Ally's team in forestry has I don't know if you've ever went or been on the forestry website, but they have over 55,000 street trees that they are responsible for
Yeah.
throughout the city. And so they have a very specific plot of which trees need to be replaced at different times. That includes what's going on downtown. We're talking about the street walls, right?
No.
No.
Sorry.
It's like-
Banners.
The windows, they're like ridiculous.
All
things.
these
Ones were, sorry.
No, it's okay.
I think
I
those
think-
are Terry.
Wait, what, I'm sorry, what are you?
I was talking
I'm talking about like
this-
in the vacancies,
The
how you
vacancies,
put the,
they put the sign
downtown
across
Boulder
the
ad.
window.
Oh,
you also were thinking about
Cover all
trees,
the
right?
vacant
trees.
spaces.
Yeah, we both were
Yeah.
talking about the. we were
Sorry,
both
it was
thinking
like
about
on the
really nice
previous slide,
too.
there's like one behind.
And it was nice when you had like something new's coming here. I noticed
That's
though.
also great too.
Yeah.
I was
So
specifically
Terry
talking
did
about the
those on the
vacancies.
yes,
side.
and that was a collaboration between DVP and Community Vitality.
And-
Yeah.
okay, so it was,
Yeah,
Yep,
okay.
yep, yep.
And is that was that like a one-time thing, or is that like an ongoing process if there's like a vacant space and then?
I would say it would be great if it was a program where every time there was a vacancy, we had the funds to do that, but we simply don't. The specific, I think you're probably talking about the Keystone.
Yeah.
Yeah, that project took a long time to get a hold of the property owner and get permission from them. So yeah, we sort of do it on an ad hoc basis. There was one in the pool space before the pool space opened.
Yeah.
And if anybody else has any programmatic memory of this, please.
Well, I mean, the initiative was tied to just the high number of
Yeah.
longer term vacancies, which is not something that we typically had in
Yeah.
the downtown, but focused primarily on the east end. So would love to get to a space where we don't have enough time
To
to
do that,
need to do it.
yeah,
But certainly doesn't mean that we can't continue to do it in the future. It has been focused primarily on the east end just because of
yeah,
challenges is just the sheer number of vacant spaces. Where if it's one empty space here or there, that is traditionally been a long-term problem.
So what Christine and I were thinking. we were talking about are
Yes,
these
let me
little-
hear.
It wasn't just me.
Sorry.
Like I was all by myself out there, wasn't I?
Continue.
That's in the materials where it says something new is coming.
Oh.
It's taking root, like a new tree is gonna be planted here, and that's been a partnership where. Parks printed these, and then our team, the ambassadors went out and placed them. And then
And then
had
a
to
windstorm
replace them.
came, that was exciting. And then we had to replace them. Yeah.
So that's new, if something's coming, I'll.
We're
look for this.
trying to get ahead of, lots of folks ask the same questions
Yeah,
over and over again, and so trying to get ahead of that, is the intent, as much as possible, because there are only certain times of the year you can plant trees. There are only certain times of the year you can set concrete. There are only certain times of the year you can address a lot of the large
I like
complaints that come out of the community, so trying to get ahead of it.
And there's gonna be a lot more greenery starting tomorrow. We have our spring green program. 83 businesses, we're gonna have 150 flats of flowers, so I'll be sorting. With our operations manager tomorrow morning. Thanks. Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Bettina. Matters from staff, it's Broadway and Spruce proposal update, Mr. Jones.
All right, I will be relatively brief, but I did want to introduce Jeff Bernice here. He just happens to be in town. But you might recognize him from the screen at your last meeting. Jeff, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, so I did join in our previous meeting, so along with my partner Ryan, who was unable to make the meeting today. You may recall Ryan is developing a project in downtown Denver called the Ramble Hotel. Happened to be in town, had a chance to come and see Chris, had a few other city, thought I'd pop in and say hello. We continue to have a significant interest in working together and finding a way to forward probably inspiration. Here. And anybody that.
I am gonna go through some slides just to give you a more detailed update of where we're at in the conversation. And then, of course, Jeff will be here to answer the questions from their side. So we have received a draft addendum from their team for a buy-sell agreement. It's currently in internal review with Community Vitality, City Manager's Office and the City Attorney's Office, and we have some more work to do there. But there are going to be some key considerations that we're going to need to be contemplating in the months ahead as we continue on this partnership. Some things I just want to remind and point out for the commission, just to queue up what the next conversations are going to be, is that we want to acknowledge that these folks are going to want some clarity and certainty of what their process is going to be, working with the city as a seller, but also the city through a development review process that any property or any developer would go through in our community. And there are going to be some tracks that we can consider in this conversation with them. We do have the option to evaluate of just selling the property outright for the offered 5.2 million with some sort of conversation about how parking is going to be managed for that development. That is because the current land use for this parcel does not require a developer to build parking. So if the city didn't own it or Cage didn't own it, some other entity owned it, they would have the right to develop on that parcel without building any parking. Since the city does own it, that's what gives us leverage to determine what role parking should play on this parcel in the future. So we are going to need to be having some conversations about what role KJID and the GID should play with providing parking for the entire district, and also thinking about parking for the hotel project. So that could translate into a public-private partnership with Jeff and his team to have KJID own parking underground at Broadway and Spruce. So in order to determine whether or not we want to spend resources to make that thing happen, we need to do some work to analyze if there needs to be KJID owned parking on this parcel, how much is needed and how are we going to pay for it. And so that's some near-term analysis work that we are intending to pursue as we continue our negotiations with the team. We do have an on-call consultant that helps us with this type of work. This is work that we have done periodically many times over the existence of the GID. The last time we did a comprehensive parking model for downtown was 2016. The world has changed a little bit. We do know that in the near term that existing KJID assets could certainly accommodate intensified use on that site. But we have a long-term need that we need to model and understand before we make any decisions related to the role of parking on that particular location. And so once we've done that work, we can continue to engage with you all, and then of course City Council as the board of directors of KJID to determine what path forward we will be going with the development team. And so with that, just want to check in with you. Do you have any questions about those suggested next steps, particularly as it relates to engaging with a consultant to do some analysis of parking demand near term and long term associated with this change in use?
Is this like specific to on-site parking at that lot? Or if the hotel has valet and then where do they park the cars? Does the city have any like authority in saying, well, park the cars at our lot? Or, you know, and to get revenue from that parking? Is that part of the conversation?
That is part of the conversation.
Okay.
Yes.
And there isn't only one option of building an underground lot. There's other options of Where are the people gonna park and how does the city?
Correct, and how do we work with the developer to have them pay for that parking that exists in another facility?
Okay,
Would one of the options be instead of KG donating the whole underground lot, that it's some sort of split where we own 50 spots and they get 20 spots?
So this is a change, that's happened where, again, the land use does not require, if it was owned outright by a private entity, there is no parking requirement for this parcel. And so, it's our understanding from the team that they think they could operate a successful hotel on this parcel with zero parking.
So they don't, and
Exactly,
yeah. It's like democracy. They don't have parking.
they have 50 spaces.
But they buy spaces from someone else, right?
They are working with the Lilac Hotel on additional spaces.
On buying, okay, yeah, but they didn't build a lot, yeah.
the bottom line, these would be more underground spots, which struggle at times. People like off street parking.
Yeah,
How
I
much
was like,
parking revenue does it bring in and how will you make up for that loss?
As
So-
always the current lot.
Yeah, the current lot brings in, I think, upwards of about $300,000 a year. And so, but we wouldn't presume that all of a sudden, if we don't have those parking spaces that, folks aren't still coming downtown and paying for parking elsewhere. We can do, that can be included in the analysis. And again, we have underutilized spaces at other facilities such as the Trinity Garage, sits mostly empty. That's an underground garage just a block and a half away. That is a prime location to consider for revenue generation that's currently not generating.
yeah,
As an example, and that's why we need to engage with our on-call consultant to do that analysis and understand. Make sure that our existing assets or not can appropriately absorb additional intensity with the new development as well as continue to serve the rest of our customers, or do we need to finance an underground parking garage at Broadway and Spruce? And if the answer is yes, we can do that too. We just have some homework to do to give design team some certainty. So there's a big difference in the design of a hotel. There's a parking garage underneath versus no garage.
I mean. Why is there interest in building an underground parking garage? Like, what?
How maybe this parking is the number one.
No, but like we have. Like, that's a giant development project for a new lot, and we already have unused space and that we even could sell off, like that just feels antithesis of our strategy, which is to move away from building more parking infrastructure, right?
Yeah, I would say. Community vitality on the stuff, so at this
Yeah.
point, we're largely agnostic. And that's the conversation we're gonna wanna have with some data to back up a recommendation. That will play out in conversation with you all and council as the board of directors.
Roughly how many hotel rooms?
Probably 90 to 100, it will depend, ultimately, on a lot of things, frankly. But probably,
90 to 100, so I mean, and maybe not everyone's driving. Because some people will do something else, I think there's, on any busy weekend, at least half of it. Maybe.
I don't know.
maybe.
I mean, there's comps where they can.
Five examples where a hotel like that is should operate. We would intend subterranean parking. Not the problem to work with the city, as Chris has said, to find all of our parking goes to the future.
Yeah.
Park. It seems like it's actually.
So what, do we want to do a quick vote, keep going with the analysis?
You don't need to vote, but if you had,
Yeah.
just a discussion,
I'll look
just
forward
to
to
make sure that
I
we're.
look forward,
Seeing where it goes.
I look forward to the way that we can keep pricing low for like locals, buying, repurposing, offsetting some of the costs, which are very expensive, Christine, to keep these garages clean and feeling, so I'm really intrigued by the no-build underground parking garage and repurpose for the city.
I mean, I would just like to hear more about the traffic impact. That's my biggest concern as someone who has a store west of Broadway. I want to know. I mean, I already can't wait to see what it's gonna be like for Canyon. And all this work that's about to happen, 'cause there's really only two main ways to get west of Pearl, and it's Canyon and Spruce. And so I'm just curious, and there's a one way to get into the existing parking garage. So I don't know, I guess I would like to know how they plan to work around that. So that people can still, I mean, I just think the 16th Street Mall, I just. Well, yeah, I have a million questions like that. But I don't think I.
Well, moving on to the next topic then. All right, I moved as the sun was getting in my way. Improvement district analysis update.
Great.
Pretty good.
I just have a verbal update for you all. So we went to council on April 24th to share the presentation that we essentially shared with you all on April 8th, during the joint commission meeting. It was really well received. The recommendations from Puma, including the exploration for a DEA, was supported by council. And so staff will be working to pursue those recommendations as next steps. So immediate next steps, we are working on finalizing a scope of work, including a timeline for exploring and implementing a DDA, working backwards from the November 2026 election, so getting it on the ballot for November 2026. And the scope will be for a consultant team to do a lot of this work to conduct the financial modeling, TIF projections, evaluate existing governance structures, so how does this impact KJID, UJID, the bid, and then supporting community engagement as well. And then we're also, I know this came up earlier, we're working on the commercial areas blueprint scope. So that document will provide a long-term strategic vision. It will outline tactics, specific investments, and help guide city staff work plans for the next 20 years to really support our commercial areas. So we're working for, on the scope for the RFP for that now. That'll be released in the coming weeks.
The sentiment that council is like a lot of support, right?
Yeah,
That's what I
yeah,
heard.
a lot of support. Yeah.
Watched the whole thing,
Great, yeah.
and generally they were supportive. There's two that were supportive with
Trepidations.
concerns.
Yeah.
But generally,
That's pretty good.
And I would say the concerns were mostly tied to just ensuring that staff are coordinating cross-departmentally, make sure we're tapping into the long-term financial strategy work and the civic area. And we're gonna receive a final report from Puma by the end of June, so I'm happy to distribute that. That's for the district analysis work that will outline the recommendations that we shared with council. Elaborating on those and kind of giving a step-by-step process for.
I thought they did a really good job. I mean, his energy about the DDA is contagious, even though it's like a financial instrument. So I thought that was
Brad's energy.
Brad's energy about unmatched DDA energy. And I think he did a really good job at answering questions and helping that joint commission to be really felt like a productive use of time. So good job on facilitating that. Sorry, Don, you missed out.
I know I was.
Major FOMO.
Yeah, but I've done some other research on DEAs and just how effective they are and the wisdom behind them. So I've been doing some of my own homework just to understand kind of the bigger picture as well as this group. I hopefully it works.
Yeah. We'll continue to keep you all updated.
All right, thanks for
Mission Summit.
Yeah, so this is just a follow-up to your request from the last meeting. We have been engaging with the other commissions. There's general support for an opportunity to meet across commissions, but there's also a desire for individual commissions to have time to do their own individual retreats. So the staff team and I will be working to get something on the schedule. We're targeting the November range, which is our typical business rhythm for the annual retreat in advance of writing letters to city council as they prepare for their retreat, which is in the first quarter typically of the following. And so more to come on that. And we'll be working to develop a agenda and identify facilitation and support
That
it.
would be maybe one of my, if I could ask Ali to put in our next packet, like, we need to come up with our, what do we have, on off months, one of the things I do as chair is I meet with Chris and the other groups just to kind of formulate the agenda for this meeting. And I would just love to get all your inputs for if we are going to all meet together. We need a little bit of a session to help give, whether it's y'all doing your own homework and sending it to me, or we all send it out or whatever. But we just need to like a little, like, what would we want to do with those other groups? Because Chris, the team can do their own agenda, but I think it's what would we like to cover. With it. And I've had that in the back of my mind. I think I talked to Stephanie about, like, well, what do you want to do? I'm like, well, I have some ideas, but it's not for all of us to do. And so I just want us to make sure we have time and a reminder maybe from Ali to say like, hey, come up with some ideas. If we're gonna meet, we can pitch that to you to help formulate that bigger agenda.
The one question I had, like the obvious. I hate the word synergy, but the obvious synergy is between us and UJID. EJAD, like, I don't want to be negative, but I just feel like there's very little cross overlap in what we would be interested to talk about. And that even seemed obvious in the DDA discussion, like their situation was so different, development plan. It felt like a stretch, like that we find value in aligning, like, and having a lot of overlap in topics. But like the hill connecting is just like a big theme for us. So it
Maybe the
felt
one thing I would
obvious.
counter
Yeah.
with that is if and when the train ever comes, and maybe it's coming again, now that Polis has gotten, it would stop over there. So how do we get people from there downtown to the business district? And so I do see there is connections that we do need to develop. Yeah, I'm trying to like form maybe homunculars and stuff on the hill and all that, but like I think we need to connect. How do we connect them over to us? Because the bus, there is, the skips and the drums and all those things, but like there might need to be something more efficient should we get a train.
Probably long term as well. I know, especially with Sundance coming here and possibility of a theater being built over in the Junction area. Having that cross contamination.
Yeah,
there.
so I the way I see it is how can we enliven East End so that people go through East End to get to 29th Street to get to, this kind of. And so there's wins there because by doing that, we're activating STEM too.
Yeah, and I see that, but like but we have a narrow scope in this commission about what we have influence over, and not even influence, like where we can advise. And I just think it's not necessarily motivating to be brainstorming topics together where we have no control or insight to, so like I just want to like reduce the scope to figure out really where is the meaningful overlap where there's planned city initiatives that it would be useful for us to meet about and collaborate on together versus sort of a pie in the sky thing where they would be fun, but it might not have like meaningful impact or that ROI. Yeah.
So. Community Vitality's work, regardless of council priorities and kind of those conversations, does work across all districts. And the commercial areas blueprint will also have some considerations for Boulder Junction as well. And there are conversations we need to have facilitated of just individual commissions as well. So we need to get something out of this work too. If we're going to put the effort into facilitating and organizing this thing, we are going to selfishly influence your agenda to make sure that we're getting out what we need to help prioritize our work. And so, and we wouldn't want to leave our BJED commissions out of that conversation. But it doesn't mean that we don't welcome input on.
Yeah, I want us to be able to pitch,
agenda.
but you don't, not always.
So yeah, more to come. We've got some time to plan. Well, first thing is we're gonna want to make sure we get something on the calendar because it will be, it's not going to be a 1 hour meeting. It will be a more lengthy facilitated in a different space that has better HVAC. So more to come, but we had promised at the last meeting that we would investigate with the other commissions to see if they had any interest in such a thing. And I think we have needs of such a thing as well. So it does make our lives easier when we can have 1 meeting instead of 3. So that's what we're targeting.
I was also telling John that they assumed it was about the DDA. You brought it up.
Got it.
Yeah, that's how I read them. They're like, oh, does Don want to like talk about the DDA together? Like a follow-on
Got it.
versus like a general thing, so. That's why they were like, can you ask Don why he's interested in this? Is it about this or is it something else? Like, so I don't think they have a vision for it yet. It would have to be. Yeah.
All right, before I move on, it did not make it to the agenda, but Elliot has been working on 2026 budget planning. He does have information to share, not big decisions to make, but if you don't mind, if we interject a surprise agenda item.
We're doing well on time.
Then Elliot, I will pass it over to you to inform the commission on what's to come on budget planning.
You bet. It's good to be present. Station, present station. So thanks, Chris, and apologies I didn't make it on the agenda. It's still important, right? Let's talk about it. So just a little bit of a timeline of what happens when, we've passed our initial first deadline, which is really just looking at the budget from what we've had in previous years and just the things that we do on a regular basis, and we saw any need for increases just because things cost more now. The good news is we didn't really have a whole lot of those. We did some CPI adjustments for the out years. But given just past performance budget, which we'll get into this a little bit more, we didn't really see a lot of need to really drive up costs just for the sake of thinking things are gonna cost more. We did a thorough analysis and worked with our partners on that to confirm that. The next deadline, coming up here shortly, is then taking money where we didn't spend and putting it to places where we overspent. It's fancy word, it's called realignment. And we'll be doing that. We're doing that process right now. It's really just moving it from one line item to another line item. So no increases on the budget or constraints on expenses, but just looking at that a little bit from how do we align it to where it's actually spent. So it doesn't look like we're overspent.
And these are forming of proposals that will need to go then for review. So more to come on what those realignments are.
Correct. And then the last final one is June 27th, and that's going to be our final submission to central finance. So that's any enhancements that we had, which we will talk about those here shortly because of some of the one-time things that were not carried over into the 2026 budget creation. We'll be asking for some of those back for 2026. So then what that means is in July, we'll get together with y'all to take a vote on whether or not to recommend the budget to city council. And then it will go, well, unfortunately, it'll be after that, the EBT will give us any feedback, any changes, but shouldn't anticipate any large changes there. And then in September, we'll have a study session with council. We'll be reviewing the entire city's budget, which will include the general improvement district's budgets. And they'll have some questions, not any formal votes on that process at that point, but it's more of just a discussion with staff on what makes up that budget. The actual first vote for the general improvement district doesn't happen until the second reading, which is October 23rd. So the first reading is the citywide budget, but there's no actual formal movement and changing to the board of directors for the general improvement districts until that October 23rd.
When was it last year when we heard the budget and then we like made some recommendations to fund more of the ambassadors?
So
What was that process?
there's a couple things that happened last year. One of the council members during the first reading, I believe it was, asked that we change the ambassador or we increase the ambassador allowance for living wages. That was second reading?
That was
That was 2 years ago.
That was 2 years ago?
I think that was me, but yeah.
Oh, wow.
So, last September, so
Okay.
we had a recommended budget. Of a certain portion of KJID that we presented to you all, at the July meeting.
Yeah,
We went through the EBT process and then we came back to you in September. Is when we let you know that there was a shift and we checked in with you to see if you still supported the city manager's recommended budget. And we got a thumbs up and then that's what went.
And that had to do with not so much the amount, but more the funding mechanism. The split between general funding.
is that, we were in this like temporary funding
One time.
scenario.
Yeah,
Okay,
yep, so that was approved one time in for this year's budget.
yeah,
So it is, we will be asking for an extension of that and kind of removing the temporary process of it and making it an ongoing project. Or program going
under
26.
KJID or under the general,
Both,
so like a split.
Keep the split.
Okay,
Our intent would
that's what
be
I
to
was-
keep the split the same.
correct. So looking at the 2025 commission priorities, I just wanted to pull those back in to kind of re-highlight, what you all discussed, during that priority setting process. But also pull in kind of the district analysis outreach, and the stuff that Puma put together. So definitely some overlap in the priorities there, a little bit more short and sweet. The challenges, were some things that we've discussed, and we've been discussing through our district analysis work. And we'll be working to resolve it into the future. So where we are, so this is the prior year revenue performance. So this is everything that happened in 2024. You can see in the blue column is what we were anticipating, our projections, if you will, for revenue. And then in the lighter green column, there is what we actually received. So on the bid side, we outperformed our projections by 38% on interest and investment earnings, which is great. Kind of neutral. It looks like there's a whole lot of money that we brought in through other revenues. We projected 64,000 and brought in about 570,000. And that was really just a reimbursement from our partners at St. Julian. So we paid in advance of all the capital work, and then through our agreement with the St. Julian, they reimbursed us. So the way government works, that can't come in as an expense reduction, it actually has to come in as revenue. So that's why it looks like we had so much extra revenue, but it is nice that we did get reimbursed. So that's a good news. Downside is we were slightly below expectations on parking. I will say there's a little bit of a caveat there. We had a pretty big past due balance for our long-term permit holders. And working with Metropolis, we got them to understand the importance of making sure we don't have a big AR log. So actually this year we're on track because of our lower than expectations in 24. We're actually on track to be well above expectations for 2025. And it's really just the timing of payments. It's not that we're performing any better or worse, it's just the timing of payments. On the expense side, from our projected versus actuals, we actually performed great in all areas. We came in lower than expected. I will say the reason I said that capital improvement program was red, something that we want to be watching is that we were 60% below our target. A lot of that had to do with just trying to get the encumbrances and the procurement process out the door. This year, things are looking quite a bit different. So most of that money is certainly spoken for, if not already under contract. So you will notice that as you see construction in all of our facilities or sitting in a building where there's no HVAC. So we did have some savings again from the EcoPass program, kind of a neutral feeling on that. That is based on actual rides now, not number of EcoPass holders. So what that means is we're not having that many rides on RTV through the EcoPass program. That being said, was it mid Q3, I think, last year, we made a decision to expand the EcoPass program to part-time employees as well. So we're hoping we can actually get that closer and closer to where we're expected to be paid for the EcoPass program. And a big shout out to the maintenance team, even though we had a large freeze event, early 2024. We were still under by 5.5% on what we were expecting, so that's great. Did really good on that.
What happens to the money when we're under budget or over budget? Does it pull from general fund or does it go back to the general fund or what happens?
So it all stays in Cajun. So the district, it's, if you were to think about it.
It's our own little budget. We get to go if we have to. So we've got some in reserves.
100%, yep, so it just goes back to the bank account, so to speak. That's not my work, that's the work of staff, but thank you.
Gotta sell to someone.
Someone's gotta get it, right? So fund balance wise, so where are we at? What does that all mean? Revenues came in slightly above what we were expecting, expenses came in quite a bit below than what we were expected, so what that did for the fund balance is. You can see our ending fund balance there on that right-hand side in the green. We ended at, I think it's around $23 million in fund balance. So Don, back to your question, all of that money just goes right back to the fund balance, which.
Wait one slide.
Right, yep, so yeah. So what that does is it frees it up for that, the future years, we can then program those dollars in. And the fund financials that you all should have received in your packet. If you remember from last year's fund financials in 2029, we were down to about $1 million in fund balance because we were programmed so heavily in our capital program. And actually this year in 2030, we're looking to be a much healthier fund, which is a good thing because we're going to need it for more capital investment. Because right, which is kind of this general improvement district's really their incentive is to invest back into its assets so that those assets can then maintain a good revenue portfolio for them. So that's great. All right, where are we going? So you can see here, this column, these three columns is really what was adopted in 2025. So that's what we were anticipating spending back in March 2024. And then the second column there, the darker green is now that we're in 2025, what do we actually anticipate? And then we're in May of 2025 and crystal balling 2026. What do we expect to spend there? And I will say a caveat, that is a draft budget. So that does not include any asks for like the ambassador program. And it does not include any asks for like the special event stuff. So all of those one-time things are not baked into here. So it's not a complete accurate picture. Those numbers will change quite a bit, but being as we're talking about sources of funds here, we do see continued growth in our revenue for parking specifically because we are actually enforcing our garages now, which we had not been really in the past because we had a gate. So the gate kind of acted as our physical barrier for enforcement. Now that we're gateless, we actually do run enforcement and we have been seeing some decent revenues of enforcement. Hopefully that doesn't continue when we get compliance, which we would expect, but with compliance comes more revenue on the compliance side of things, so it just shifts buckets. Property taxes are flattening. Y'all probably noticed in your assessed values that you got from the county this year. Probably a dip is what most people saw, which is not a bad thing, right? From a property owner's perspective, that's a good thing, more money in your pocket. From a general improvement district side of thing or government side of thing, that just means less revenue to reinvest back into those districts where those property taxes are collected. Leases, rents and royalties.
Do you know what the dip was like?
Overall.
Like what that percent, because I just got that like 2 days ago, and it's like, wait,
Yeah,
I was curious about the scope of that.
yeah,
It's
so we
pretty
basically,
strong.
we just held it flat.
Okay.
Is what we're doing. So reason being is there's a couple things have changed. One, obviously, the assessed value of properties has changed. The assessed rate at the state legislative session is changing, and then there's also a lot of state legislative bills that have kind of capped the amount of revenue that can be collected. It reduces the assessed value over time and so on and so forth. So we've basically kind of done a flat projection for property tax. That is now, if we do see some development and some increase in property values, that would obviously change for Cajun in addition to city and everything else. Leases, rents and royalties, being very conservative with that. We're in a process, we just changed our property management company. And we want to kind of let them get their feet wet before we make any big decisions on making projections for future funds. Also, we're really hoping to do more and more affordable commercial programs, which have an impact in revenue, but has an impact also in foot traffic to the area, sales tax, and just kind of the overall ambiance of the district as well. So we're not necessarily seeing that as a negative. Use of funds, cost allocations, so that's what we pay back to the general fund for things like HR, IT, central finance, city manager's office, city council, city attorney, et cetera, that's actually gone down a little bit based on previous year's projections and actually into the future as well, so that's good, that's favorable. District vitality, we have that one-time savings in the ambassador program, which we fully anticipate re-asking again. Did not make it one time. And then our capital improvement program, that is not finalized yet. So I know Christine had to step out, but I've been getting lots of communications from her and our senior project manager on how we are going to be needing to ensure we have good funding for the capital improvement programs necessary at our assets. So where does that take us, right? You can see there are 2025 adopted versus projected ending fund balance changed so much just because of the 2024 actuals changed so much. So our projected ending fund balance went up quite a bit because of that. The 2026 draft, you can see it is already starting to eat into the fund balance just without any enhancements, any changes in capital improvement program. So that's something we're going to be watching and keeping in a close eye on to make sure that we obviously have a very healthy fund balance into the future. So where are we going? Just a few other things, kind of re-highlighting the increases cost because things are getting more expensive. Not a whole lot of changes there, moving money to where we actually need to spend it. And then asking for more money is that last process. Again, those enhancements and asking for one-time programs to become permanent. And then our big to-do list. Obviously, with the district vitality projects, we have the DDA conversation that's really big on our minds, as well as the commercial area blueprints and how do we connect not just downtown in UJ, but how do we connect like Boulder Junction, for instance, and any other commercial area, so that as we have people who are wanting to be in commerce connected to these different areas. So something that we're constantly thinking about. Arts and culture projects, we have quite a few of those coming up. University Hill's getting a lot of love right now with some CCS funds that were available from 2017. But also working on some of the things that we're doing with Pearl Street. Of course, the Pearl Street refresh is coming up really soon. And then the big one is really what are going to be our changes for the 25 through 31 CIP. Questions?
The Parks and Rec things they were talking about with the Boulder Beach and all those other things, those are a totally separate budget. This is just Cajun, so.
Correct.
You know, because it is a little bit extra, we can't help support getting any of those things done faster.
Can't is a strong word. I would say that there are opportunities for AG to do some investments. However, given the East Book in conversation, there may be a more appropriate use of AG dollars in terms of what investments those are made on the East Book end. Thinking about the intent of Cajun and how it manages parking and provides parking for this area, there may be some opportunities for Cajun to do some investments in that way. I would say that there's certainly going to be some asks for how Cajun does some investments in the East Book, but it might look a little bit different from the Parks and Rec standpoint and more on the development parking asset standpoint. Is what I would kind of anticipate.
Yeah, too early to say exactly what the future is going to be.
Right.
Same thing with Parker Park. It's in the district, any public, amenity in the district, there is an option. If we can make it work financially to contribute $80 to make something happen. For instance, the Pop Jet Fountain on the Pearl Street Mall was something that Cajun helped fund. It would not have happened if there hadn't been that ability to pay for such a film at the 25th anniversary. So we certainly have conversations with other departments to entertain what might be appropriate for Cajun to support if it allows the city to make something happen that wouldn't otherwise happen, like at any other park across the city.
The zip line thing is pretty cool.
Is there, besides selling off that lot, is there any other like explorations into selling off other Cajun properties or even divesting in low margin or high costs for the next 30 years scenario?
So, yeah, the Broadway spruces are only surface lot.
Yeah,
So, and that's the balance that we need to be thinking about, is we still have forming ordinance responsibility to provide all the parking for all commercial properties in the district. So if we do entertain perhaps offloading, for instance, the Randolph Center garage, because it's our oldest garage and we have to spend a significant amount of capital dollars to keep it from falling into the ground.
Yeah.
Literally. We could save money, right? We could save money by making it somebody else's problem and allowing it to redevelop it into something else. But it's part of our overall portfolio of parking for the district. So we would need to make sure that we can absorb that in other ways, whether it's building more parking or managing our assets differently. So that's the trade-off and the balance that we would need to maintain and entertaining offloading other assets.
is that the big project, I don't remember what it's called, near the St. Julian,
Civic use pad.
the Civic Use Path project, is that part of the conversation as well? To offload and
Yeah, so the St. Julian's always had ownership rights to the above ground level, so Cajun still owns all the underground space. The garage was originally built in anticipation of that intensity of use above it. That's why our utilization in that garage is the lowest in the district, because it was built in anticipation of more intense uses.
okay, so we're just like anticipating that will fill up with that development.
That, and it's also in service to the civic area across the street. So where we're thinking about,
Okay.
we're gonna be intensifying the uses in the civic area. As we tear down
Benefit,
buildings, and, right, how do we make sure that folks who need to drive have reasonable access, and or Walnut and Tenth Law is part of that.
That level, okay.
Yeah, I guess when we're thinking about parking, and you're talking about selling off the Bruce and Broadway thing for the hotel. You know, getting 5.2 million for it, we get 300K a year, roughly, that's talking at 16 years. We would make that money anyways.
Yeah, it seems like a low price.
That seems like a low, we're not offsetting income we're going to lose. We're just selling the property, but we're not offsetting the income once. You know, from an
There's also
ROI point of view.
maintenance costs.
There's expenses associated with that $300,000 revenue.
It's a lot, I mean, like.
How much expense?
Well, we just repaved it and it was about $40,000 to $50,000.
And that's every 10 years?
Hypothetically, it is every 10 years, and then of course there's the trees.
Meter
and there's the meter maintenance, we pay for the meter program, those types of things. It's not a substantial amount of money, but it is.
So maybe it's 20 years. Yeah, for our ROI for 5.2. Something like that.
Right.
But it's also, it's a very small portion of our total portfolio.
Yeah,
Correct.
And if the hotel partner intends to purchase parking from us.
Elsewhere.
That's also currently underperforming. So right now, on average, we're at about 50% utilization in our total portfolio on a typical busy day. That's down about 30% from our busiest days pre-pandemic. And so in a typical busy day, and before the pandemic, we were about 70 to 80% utilization of our total portfolio. And so so right now, we know we have capacity and wiggle room in our assets. If our office vacancy rate goes back down to what would typically be an average typical vacancy between 7% or lower, then all of a sudden we have a lot more folks coming in downtown utilizing spaces and they're going to parking. And so we need to be not modeling just on current conditions, but the conditions that we want to plan for and hope for the commercial spaces that just aren't producing parkers right now.
Maybe one more question I had on this. When did Cajun acquire these properties and how? What funding mechanism and,
So, well, Cage has been around since 1970. So
did we just buy them as part of the whole Full Street and all that stuff. or-
There was a downtown master plan that identified the locations where there were opportunities to start a surface parking. So this was a city surface parking lot. 14th and Walnut was a city surface parking lot. Spruce, like all of our garages were at one time district-owned surface parking lots that over time have evolved into structured.
So DMC bought those or upgraded the surface garages, et cetera. Correct. Anything else before we move on? We have a couple matters from staff or from commissioners.
I didn't put this on here, but I have been unable to attend the past two because of business trips. But I have gone to the special events. The town hall, which was really interesting. Was anyone else at the town hall? Oh, yes, I saw you. Which I thought that the update on Sundance was really
That was great.
great. Just the depth of it, and I know she went long, but I had no idea about a lot of those things, so that was new for us, and I also thought that Michael Doherty's update was also particularly interesting, because we don't really engage with that part when we just talk about the police in. So that was a great event. I encourage commissioners to go to future town hall events. I am looking for someone to perhaps fill my spot with going to the bid meetings, because I'm a little bit less flexible with my schedule in the upcoming months, and I feel bad missing them and not being able to provide an update. So we talked about rotating my mate, and I haven't talked to you about it, but we know the bid.
So it's every other month, the second Thursday. From 8:30 to 10. Yes.
It's in the morning.
I can do it because I have to be at work at 10 anyway, so,
I usually work time.
yeah. Like that works.
That works for you?
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay,
so,
are you interested, Eric,
Yeah.
in taking my
yeah,
non-voting seat?
Yeah.
Ex officio?
It is ex officio. It would be nice just to formalize in the minutes if we could have a
Vote.
vote to confirm. Because we will want to do the same thing at the.
I nominate Erica for being our ex officio person, the DVP meetings. Yeah, you're second.
bid.
The bid.
Also,
I third.
No objections.
No objections. Thank you, Erica.
Then, I had reached out to all of you before that agenda setting meeting that we do on off months. And, I forwarded those to Ellie. I might just note that we they didn't hit our agenda. We did talk about having the DMC was interested in how we can encourage a more proactive and experimental approach to filling the second floor office vacancies, what strategies are in place. Either for allowing owners to adapt their properties, marketing outreach, rent reduction plans, tax offsets, simplifying the planning process, etc. Was one item we had brought up. Proposed hotel has thinking about current retail stores and restaurants that are already struggling while we're building a new place. How do we support growth while adding new capacity? And the third thing was getting ahead of the curve with the Sundance stuff for what we might need to do as the DMC for planning for events and parking and all the stuff. You know, the Go Boulder person that Stephanie just mentioned, have a wealth of information, and just how might that impact things that would touch the DMC. So those were three things that I brought up, and they didn't funnel down to our agenda. And so I'm bringing up under matters from commissioners. If I'm not stating who sent me those, anyone can speak up. Do we want to have more discussion around that? We are ahead of time.
Just for future agendas?
That was supposed to be for today's agenda. And I brought them up, submitted them, but they didn't come through to our agenda. And so maybe Chris or whatever, how do we do that? Because we did have some things we wanted to talk about that didn't
And I was not at the last,
I can
Join.
speak to that, John, that's on me, I apologize, I thought when I connected you with Jennifer and Bettina. That they had like continued that discussion with you, and I did it after that meeting, and I didn't realize that those were still items that you could like talk about agenda, so I apologize.
Yeah, I was the conduit. I was not the receiver of necessarily the information. I was like, I gathered information so that I could come to that meeting with. I haven't done that every time, so I was like, let's make sure that I'm not just setting the agenda. We are all submitting stuff for what we want to talk about. And so I didn't know if you'd send it out to everyone else, or if that just came to me, or.
Who requested the item? Not you, you're saying, someone else?
Correct.
Oh, I sent them out, so I BCC, and I send them out to the chairs and the vice chairs. For the joint agenda setting, so those are the people who get to. Who vote on the agenda, for each meeting, are the chairs and the vice chairs. And if we want to open that up to other people.
Well, because I don't want to be a dictator.
Sure.
You already opened it.
I opened it up and I became the voice for the DNC, saying, here's the things we would like to have addressed.
About the
And,
July meeting, maybe.
and they, yeah, and so I'm just stating they weren't.
were they discussed, so again, I wasn't at the joint commission's agenda setting meeting that happened last month. Were these brought up at that meeting?
I brought them up ahead of time so they could be dressed there, and then honestly, now that was like 4 weeks
So
ago. I
that's
don't
it.
remember
That
the whole,
would have been the venue. If you didn't hear them at that meeting,
make
then,
like them.
that would have been a good way to make sure that, hey, where did those things go?
And that's why I'm bringing it up now. I'm not upset. I'm just trying to make sure that like I did reach out to the team. We did submit things, and then I was like, oh, right.
Did you get the response that Jennifer and I sent?
Yes, but I don't know that everyone got it. Because again, I can't get CC'd on everything. That was the second floor office strategies for,
Oh,
that was Bettina's response in that.
I-
And so I'm, it's more process and protocol,
I don't think I did, because you're not, I don't think I got that.
Well, yeah, I appreciate it. I feel like I go to a lot of meetings where I just sit and I'm just presented things and I don't know when there's an opportunity to ever give an opinion, so I don't know, yeah. Like, I guess I'm still confused. I feel like,
Yeah, I guess I am confused. I could have spoken up more at our joint agenda meeting,
wait, but I.
but
thought
I
that
put
was
the
gonna
stuff
more
ahead of,
that-
but I
that
put the stuff in
whole
it ahead of
limit
time,
thing.
and I was like, honestly, I just can't remember, because it was Matt at that
So
time,
not everything that we request gets on the agenda, right? It has to be.
but we got a zero. on the agenda.
Right, so everything
Yeah.
that, so when outside of this room, when you have a quorum, you're just individuals providing input and suggestions. In an ideal world, what would have happened is those suggestions would have made it to the list of agenda items for the chair and vice chair to consider for the agenda. And think about how much time each topic is going to take. We have 2 hours that we've scheduled for this time together. Staff is gonna have our own agenda of things that we need your advice on, our work. Then there, you have, certainly we make time for the commissioners to talk about the things that you all find interesting to talk about while you're together. And, but it's that joint agenda meeting that would have, and again, I think I was out of town. So sorry I missed that, but
Yeah, Matt was
so the
flustered
process
enough trying to
certainly-
keep things together, because it was new to him, so I think I didn't want to
Exactly.
throw wrenches at him.
Lost in translation, but so. Intentionally, anything that we hear from any individual person who's, on the commission, or even the community, that's like, hey, this is an issue. We can bring to the master list of topics to possibly add to the agenda. If that gets to be 20 things, I'd presume that the facilitator, the chair, is not gonna wanna try to tackle everything
Yep.
at one meeting, so that would be the opportunity to consider the suggestions and say, this is what I wanna tackle. It matters from commissioners at the next meeting and facilitate that.
So I can
discussion.
see how the
Just start over.
snafu of it all with Matt running it, and he was flustered enough, trying, he was doing a good job, but wasn't as like you doing it 1,000 times.
There was no, that meeting was like entirely the
I thought it was
DDA.
all, yeah.
There was
No,
no
we're
time
I'm
for
talking about something else.
another Matt. I would not, okay, the same Matt, but at another meeting.
I was the off meeting that you can't attend as the
Yeah,
vice chair. We have the off month ones where, we meet at one on
Plan the
Thursdays where we
Okay.
plan the agenda. And they do it all three groups at the same time, and I do get to see the other groups, but we don't really interact, we're just like. Chris, you guys don't know this. Chris says, here's what we're going to talk to you about. Everyone gets these topics. EJ, you get this, Phil gets this, EMC, you get this. Do you have anything to weigh in on that? So there's kind of like, we all get a subset of stuff. And then we all kind of get like stuff that's specific to each one of us. At that time, I can chime in and say, oh, we would like to talk about this, and I have done that in the past. Ahead of time, Ellie, before that happens, Ellie says, commissioners, send your things you would like to address to me ahead of time, which I did do. That's when I pinged all of you. And I was like, I haven't done this. I'm gonna do this. I can't email you all at the same time. I emailed each separately to say, hey, give me your agenda items. I submitted it. I can't remember if I followed it through at the meeting, but it didn't come up at the meeting where, hey, DMC has actually suggested these three things, maybe we should talk about it. So it was, maybe I could have brought it up, but it also wasn't on the agenda then for us to debate how much time we should talk about. So it's kind of like, maybe I could have done more, but also ball was dropped that it wasn't brought up for us to consider.
It's not seem like a big deal at all.
It's not a big deal, but I'm just trying to
Yeah.
formalize.
Because
how this
normally
works,
that
'cause it didn't
meeting
happen.
is highly, I mean, when I was on it, I just brought up the things that. We wanted, you and I did, and we wanted to talk about, and then. We ended up talking about some of them and not others, and then. I think what would be helpful maybe is that like if there are things Erica or Justin or me like, hey, I'm curious about this topic. Then we like earmark it for September, or we haven't heard from them in 6 months, let's earmark that for March. It's hard to keep track of that, right, like all those things, so I'm just wondering.
Which they do,
maybe-
like, Chris has talked to me at those meetings, do you want the police to come this time? And we've talked about it, but we've also said, no, we're gonna skip it this time, yeah.
We normally have a cycle where the police comes every like 4 months, right?
Yeah. kind
It's
of.
every other.
But it used to be every month. And that
Yeah,
was something
so
we
I
decided at
think
that meeting.
If there's topics aligned to our priorities of high interest. We should have some cycle of updates from them for a special topic. Kind of category where you have a topic of interest, Erica, that there's like,
Well, maybe as a group here, do we want us to hear more about second floor? Bettina sent me an email. I don't know if y'all got it. Do we want to talk more about how to fill office vacancies and what can we do as adapting properties, marketing, outreach? Again, this is a tangential a little bit to what the DMC does, but it is kind of a big thing because if there are people there, then they need a park. That was thought.
I'm interested in this topic. I did feel that like the update from the chamber was a little bit like, just doesn't sound like we're doing that much, but maybe that was just the messaging. Like, not particularly proactive in this like huge strategy. Those are, I know that we've never had to do this before, like actively recruit. Like that. So I'd be interested in the chamber coming back. I know I missed that one. We had an update from the chamber too, specifically like months ago, 6 months, 8 months, I don't know. So I'd be interested in like when there's a high priority area, there's like some cycle. Which when they've made meaningful progress, they present it to us. And that was one of the areas.
We had Joseph Obama check come at one meeting too. when
Yeah.
We were back there.
But I don't want them to come here and like, we have nothing to present, no meaningful updates, like it should be. Tied with some like big initiative where we could be involved or want feedback or something, so I am interested in that. I'm not here in July, so not interested in that for July. But yeah, if there's meaningful updates. From the chamber on a. Strategy. And progress there, I mean. What?
Keyword meaningful.
Yeah, I don't want them to just
Right.
like come, just to come, right?
The second one was basically. As we look at building this new, or authorizing for having input on this new hotel, how do we support places that are already. Under visited. Is kind of basically the tenet of this question. Does. I can speak to that as the person who submitted
Yeah,
that.
that was me. So I'm just super curious. Everywhere I drive that there's this new project, great, this like idea of retail on the bottom with the main focus above it, I just see vacancy. So I'm just I'd love to see before we keep throwing more money at these ideas, like I look at the apartments across the street from the golf course on Arapahoe. All of those spaces are vacant down there. I look at the Moxie, they have Mr. Oso, who is, I think, trying to get people in the coffee shop, the other two retail spaces vacant.
This project doesn't have bottom retail.
Yeah, it does.
It doesn't. And
The Moxie.
the
So
hotel,
the new,
the
this
new
new
hotel
hotel.
does
Okay.
not have
Well, I-
bottom for retail.
No,
Well-
he specifically said he thinks of it as a community space downstairs that just happens to have hotel rooms upstairs.
First floor will be commercial. Commercial, it's not gonna be just a
Restaurant,
lobby.
bar.
But they are owning the restaurant and the bar. They're not, it's not gonna be a vacant space.
Well, and it's not, well, there's a lot.
We don't know.
There's a
Well, that's
lot.
what they said.
now.
I mean,
They didn't
we
present.
don't know. I look at
vacant.
the Daily Camera building and I'm like, Burton just left because their rent doubled. And that was like a big surprise to people. I guess I would just like
I do know like the Olive Building.
Olive Building.
Like they have no. rents.
Vacant, there's that new building near Microsoft, that Microsoft is maybe, I don't even know if they show up,
They don't.
vacant. So I'd like to see a successful. Where like, and then I just look at like the apartments at like 55th and Arapahoe or wherever that is across from golf, and I'm like, who's supposed to be going there besides the people that live there, and why? So I think in theory, I just keep seeing these ideas of like, doesn't this sound nice? And it sounds really nice, but then I don't know. I don't want to see, and then I feel like all that I hear is that all of these businesses and restaurants are complaining about sales, and then we're like, let's build more places with more restaurants. So I'm like, if the people that are already established are saying business is bad, then we just keep opening up new spaces. I mean, we're looking at vacancy rates, we're
So
trying to.
let me put this into how, what can we do about it? What would you like us? How would you like?
Well, I guess I would just like to hear. Like, whoever makes these kinds of decisions on approving where did they come up with, was this supposed to be, were these supposed to be filled by now and creating tax
Because
dollars?
in a way, it kind of
And-
piggybacks on the second floor office aspect too.
We don't have any, this is like planning and also like economic development, like you have to develop. To bring in new business to increase revenue, otherwise we'll be stagnant, like this is part of the economic strategy of the city, like this is not. In any city, like if we don't develop. If we don't develop new spaces, we will
But just
become
because there's a
stagnant
new
and go
space,
into
if people
decline.
aren't paying rent, then
Well, yeah, no, I mean, I
it's
just,
just another thing we have to maintain and deal with the transients in front of it and deal, like, I guess I'm just curious. I so far would love to see a success story of thriving retail on the bottom with this new
Well,
concept.
pardon me for interrupting.
Yeah.
I just want to, I'm trying to get us out in 4 minutes here.
yeah,
You have a vote. I'm trying, on what we do. Is there something you would like? To happen so that. You can be informed, or do you
I
have a
don't know,
question,
I
or
guess
does
I'm
someone
trying
need
to
to
figure out
help with us, or? yeah,
What's
how-
needed
how can I
for me as a
help you
member
get to-
here, if I don't ever get to like,
we don't have influence on these.
great, so then.
Yeah.
I guess then that's really helpful for me to know as someone who's kind of new.
I guess I look to Chris, like, you heard her, is there anything that,
Or do I just have to dig around and read articles myself or go to meetings that
I'm
I'm
trying to
maybe invited to?
facilitate as a
maybe
chair,
not?
I'm asking my subject matter expert here.
Well, I think, Commissioner Trees has pointed to, there are lots of opportunities for any individual in the community to be involved in these types of issues. It's not necessarily the charge of CAGID and this commission, not that we can't leverage or entertain possibilities to leverage the resources that we manage to help activate spaces to a certain extent. That's why we've done things like the static cling. You want businesses to be filled in spaces. That is a much bigger task.
Yeah.
And I don't know that we have the resources to actually start filling spaces with
Maybe
temporary spots. Well, I want to acknowledge that I hear your concern. And that's an issue in the downtown. I don't know that this commission yet has a lot of leverage over resolution. we can get some more information, because there are folks that are working.
Maybe the one area that I can see, just, I'm not trying to play sides, I'm just trying to facilitate this conversation. We are the ones to approve selling that property. And so maybe that's where it does enter into your conversation.
Great,
of
so I
that
don't know how to give an
specifically, but-
opinion on that without maybe hearing more information on how other projects like that are working out.
Cause if you, you know,
But I
Put
guess,
words
do I
in
have
your
to
mouth
just do
for
that
you
as
to
like
vote
a
yes, you wanna
citizen,
know
do my
more.
own research and like ask around, I guess. I don't know, willing to do that, I just
I
thought,
think he was here, so we could have asked him about that.
well, he's not,
But he
he's the hotel, he's not, what are we doing? It's kind of, it does piggyback on the second floor office one. They're very similar requests of like, how can, we are building more stuff, how can we activate what we already have?
I think the purpose of our role is, we have a forum, not like every other citizen, to like. Address concerns and to address, and to like advocate and support, like it's more than. The reported by council, that's a privilege, right, to be able to have this forum. To share our opinions and thoughts. Preferably on behalf of businesses or other citizens, but. I think that, at least that's how I see it. And I've seen my role for the past 5 years, is like, I do think we have. More influence than the average citizen being on this board, right? But that also just means that, like, we're asked to give our feedback and our opinions, hopefully to speak for more than just ourselves.
We
And
need to advocate for
Sorry,
Erica. What I hear you saying is, you don't have enough information to be able to make a vote
yeah,
based on
there's
some of these
nowhere to
things.
find out the information
And so-
unless.
That's, I think, what we can do right now is this. You would like more information about how does this impact all these other, because we do get to vote on the property sale to a degree here. And your decision on that based on some of this other information. And so we're, all right now we can do is just give that feedback to our,
I think you could, it sounds like you want an update on. What the plan is for the first floor when it's available, because it sounds like. Maybe what I heard presented was different than. What. Maybe other people heard, and that could change and evolve, and so you just want to be updated on the plan. Does that sound?
well, and as the DMC, we can, you know, we're gonna get some say on the parking. You could also have some say on like what they do.
I mean, that's not our.
Like,
We're not gonna be.
I'm trying to
You
figure
have-
out the safe part.
You are an advisory board, so you recommend the actions that we take, and ultimately it's council that gets to be the deciders. And they will consider the sentiment of the commission in the decision.
See, we're not voting on the project, we're voting to move forward. with
Yeah, I know we don't get it.
Organization.
I'm just trying to put
Yeah.
in simple terms,
Yeah.
help Erica have a voice. She's
Agreed.
asking for help about some information and we do have
Yeah.
some say on that property.
Because
It's
I
not
like to think that I'm absorbing what other concerns I hear and bringing them to this meeting to bring light to them. And I don't necessarily feel like I have an opportunity always, and I appreciated when you reached out to me. Because, yeah, I joined this board to like, be an advocate for other people that aren't on the board. But then I need to reread what the board does, and if we more just listen and just.
We are advisory where.
read. So I'm
we-
trying to figure out when
we
the
get to give-
advisory part comes in.
Yeah.
Should we put on September?
Well, yeah, it doesn't feel like we're at any meaningful point in that project where there is, like, I think we're.
For me, it's like a general inquiry of
Yeah.
like, I'd love to know. I mean, I remember when they came through with the olive, and are you pro or not? And then I'm curious now, what was proposed and has that come to fruition? And what was the expectation of that project? I just keep seeing new buildings come up and like for rent. And I'm just curious.
Yeah, I don't think that that's in the scope of our commission though. I mean, we didn't. We talked about the implications of parking from that project, and that was and we raised concerns. And some of those were addressed, and some of them perhaps were, and I don't remember. And then we moved on, I think. So I do think, yeah, we have to temper.
Yeah, you know, with Olive, I can see how we have. Little, you know, although there was a variance on their parking. And they're parking in my lot now.
Yeah.
And I'm towing, but. Because this is a property deal, there the KBO. It does you do get a little bit more. Say, but I think enough for now. I think what I wanted to do is make sure your voice was heard. That was my goal here. We're not deciding it now, and I think you guys just know. I wanted you to make sure it was heard because it didn't come through. Going back to my original thing, the whole process of me trying to bring stuff up to the agenda didn't work really well this time, and so I just wanted to make sure we were all heard.
I'd like an update from Parks after they present this summer. Something's happening big in the summer, right? So she just
The
said
outreach, the engagement.
the engagement, if there's like a meaningful update, I think that would be nice to cycle into like a September meeting, or if there's not by that, a December.
And that's what we worked in as an alternating police update and a Parks and Rec update every
Okay.
meeting, so.
Well, that's a big project that we should stay. Yeah. Up to speed on, and
Yes, and
hopefully,
implications for Cajun's responsibility to provide parking, for sure.
I think just one thing to close, Erica, I have liked, we have given feedback in the past to. The community vitality team that we like to be asked questions earlier on in a project's life cycle. To feel like we can kind of. Not be just brought in at the very end, so I do want to say that we have appreciated that in the past, and I think that. You would probably.
Or maybe
appreciate
I
that
need to
too.
ask for like someone's audience. I need to maybe ask questions to some of these. People, you know, like Brian from Community Vitality reached out to me after that meeting, was like. You have a really interesting opinion that I haven't heard from anybody yet, and I really appreciated, I sat on the bench with him for like 2 hours, I'm just like, yeah. He didn't know the daily camera building, the story behind that, he didn't know all these things, and I was like, wow. Let me think. So, yeah, I guess I'm just like, I'm always looking for discussions.
Yeah.
And maybe I just need to readjust my expectation. And I'm okay with that, but if it makes you feel better, I totally forgot you even like asked and then it wasn't on there, so. It just goes to show to like put the intention there and then.
We're all trying our best.
Great.
We're all human. Do I hear a motion?
Motion.
Adjourn.
To adjourn.
I'm like, what's, it's getting real hot.
Second.
Real hot.
All right.